Hey friends, Wayne over here at the Ram Man Inc. So, we're going to talk about the Australian debacle, which has required a huge amount of machine work and critical thinking. So, we've got a client down in Australia with a D300, which leads us to believe that it's a 1-ton, that wants to put disc brakes on his truck. And he did what we asked, and he sent us the bearing specifications. And of course, this is a full-on custom job. We've got to change the pattern on the rotor. We filled these in. We machined these 8 bolts out. These are rotors from the 70s. So we had to machine out the original studs, machine plugs here because it's a 6-bolt. If you look here, there's a massive amount of machine work done on each rotor. And then they're turned, give us this standard 6 pattern. All these races are turned to match his bearings, front and back. Hours of machine work. Normally we don't have any trouble getting any bearings. These bearings that he specified, just the inner and the outer, they had to come out of our friends in England. The only place to get these bearings was out of England. We paid over $100 for just these 2 bearings. So, 1-ton spindle on a Dodge or Mopar. It comes in this configuration. That's a 1-ton spindle. There's actually 2 of them out there. We call them the small bearing and the big bearing. If you'll notice, bearing spacer, and here's a sleeve over here. This is so we can test up the fitment. So you can understand that this spindle right here is actually the small bearing with a sleeve to make it into the big bearing unit. This is all actually it's in D200 4 doors and the D300s here in America. So you've got 2 variations of that. In the D100 you have 2 variations. The early ones through about 1954, there's an A2 here and an A6 here. Much like the 70s cars, 60s and 70s. Now, when you get to about 1955 on the D100, you find an A2 on the outside and you find the bigger A5 on the inside. A2 and A5 is a normal, what we'd call all the way through 71, a D100. Now, on D200, they kept the A5 and they put a slightly bigger A3 here on the outside. This is a normal D100, D200 spindle. It's a A3 and an A5. What you're looking at is normal D100, D200 spindles. A3 and A5. Now, in order to test up the fitment of this Australian kit, we got to check it all out. The bearings, how it mounts up, how the caliper slides on, and how the rotor slides on. Since we don't have this spindle, it's down there in Australia, we need to make a bunch of components to check it. So, of course, we made a bunch of components originally because we thought that it was a 1-ton spindle. Then when we were getting ready to ship this mess to Australia, it's December the 14th. This has been well over a month ago. I said to myself, man, something doesn't seem right. None of these bearing sizes, they don't match up to a 100. They don't match up to a 200. They don't match up to a 300. They split the difference here, there, and yonder. Slightly bigger than a D200, but not really. The depth is different. I mean, his bearing specifications, only one source in the world really threw me off. And I don't get thrown off. So I asked Kate to get some pictures of that, and come to find out, he sends us some pictures, and it's a normal, everyday D100, D200 spindle. It's nothing at all like a 1-ton spindle. So all the brackets, all the custom machine work that we did for that right there, waste of time. So now what we find out is we're going to take a normal D200 bracket and a D200 spindle, and of course these bearings don't fit either. A little bit too big, a little bit too small. That's a normal D200 spindle. We throw this on, make some changes, check for clearances and all that. But I've got to be able to test this man's kit. I cannot ship it down there unless I know that it works. Most people would just kind of get close and on the way. So, then we run into another problem. You can't it is extremely difficult to make a sleeve that thin. It's really difficult. Now, we're not even running it. It's just a sleeve, paper thin, so I can just bolt it up to check it. Remember now, I got to duplicate that spindle that's down there in Australia. That's all I've got to do. So, what did we do? So, D200 won't work. So, in order to mock this thing up at all and check it 100% and get it up out here, we got to turn all the way down to the early spindle. The very first ones. The little bitty dinky A2 and A6. Why did we have to go all the way down to this spindle? So that we could machine some sleeves practically so I can mock this up. Once I duplicate that spindle down there, then it's easy. Once I duplicate that spindle down there, then it's easy. So, what did we have to do? Well, yeah. Bearing spacers that's supposed to work on the D100 and D200 don't work. Had to machine one specially. Had to machine a special sleeve only for this Australian mock-up. It goes down like that. Then we have the special bearing spacer sleeve, which goes down like that. Then we had to machine, look at this stuff, another sleeve to go right there. So now finally, after all of that work, after all of that machine work and time and labor, we have now duplicated the spindle that is in Australia. All we've done after all this shit show, we finally now have his spindle down there in Australia. Now we get to install the races from England. And we get to check it out. And then it'll all bolt up. We check all the clearances. And yada, yada, yada. We are on our way. This specific unit, this 1968 D300 down in Australia, has been the biggest, most complicated, most difficult to do in my entire career. We've done some Australian models. They mix and match. Canada, they mix and match. Few sleeves here, few sleeves there, not too much problem. But this one, down there in Australia, is a unique bird all to itself. Once again, the only place we could find these bearings on the planet Earth was out of a company out of England. God bless you, God bless America, and let me finish this bad boy up. It will be an awesome mofo though. Bye.